Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Hatman Strikes Back Daily Boxing News. Hope you guys can hear me loud and clear. Shout out to everybody in the live chat. Let me know if I'm coming through on your end. Shout out to David Fisher, Cartledge, Railway Unboxing Fan, NJ, Team Batman Boxing, Striker, Glum Coyote, JR, Liam Goff, big up, big up. Liam Goff is talking about Adam Olayanin. Is that how you pronounce his name? Is he a brick top fighter? Shout out to Clark, Wee Warrior, Summers Boxing. Can you guys hear me loud? Okay. Railway Unboxing Fan says, sounds good to me. It was glitchy at the start. Hopefully not glitching now. So to just lay out the stuff we've got on the docket today to address, to talk about, to dissect. Devin Haney has made some comments about Floyd Schofield and his dad that are pretty interesting, potentially defamatory. So we'll tread carefully. Spencer Brown is apparently the lead promoter for the Fury Makhmudov show. We were initially told, directly or indirectly told, that it would be a Zuffa show. And then people said, no, it's a Ring Magazine show. And now apparently it's a Spencer Brown show. So we'll be discussing that. We'll be talking about Eddie Hearn making what I consider to be veiled threats of potential legal action, either against Zuffa or Keith Connolly, who is a a manager that Eddie Hearn is basically saying he has no desire to work with ever again, or at least for the foreseeable future. We'll be talking about that. We'll also be talking about the latest on the Muhammad Ali American Boxing Revival Act. That's the full title, right? It's definitely not short and snappy, is it? They've tried to make it sound as patriotic and great as possible as a cover for some of the sinister things that are in there. So we'll be talking about that. And also, after we've got through all the boxing talk, I do want to pose a question to you guys, non-boxing related. In fact, I can ask the question now to let you guys stew on it for a bit and formulate your answers. But the question is, in 2026, in modern Western society, do men need their own spaces? I'll ask the question again. In 2026, in modern Western society, do men need their own spaces? Male-only spaces. Now, some people are going to say that sounds a bit off-key. That sounds a bit rainbow. Well, no, this is off the back of a conversation that we had on a previous live stream where I was pointing out that in decades gone by, there used to be male-only social clubs. And in fact, public houses, aka pubs, were male-only until relatively recently in British history. It only became legal for women to be in pubs in the early 80s. Now, I think they'd stopped enforcing the ban on women entering pubs, or the prohibition, however you want to describe it, about a decade earlier than that. But still, legally, they didn't lift that ban until the early 80s. So that's the question for you guys. Do men need their own spaces? And if so, why? Yeah, because women do have their own spaces. I recently read an article about some housing complex, I think in London, which is female only. There's quite a lot of these now. Now, as a young man growing up, I found it very difficult to actually get a place to live. You'd have to go to so many different viewings and whatnot, and you'd get rejected, turned back, they pick somebody else, so on and so forth. Whereas for women, it's far easier, both in the private sector, getting private accommodations much easier, and getting council accommodation has historically been much easier for women. On top of all that, you've then got these women-only housing complexes popping up now to make it even more difficult for men. I mean, it's kind of interesting that type of discrimination is legal. You've got women-only clubs of various kinds, women-only gym sessions, so on and so forth. Now, some of them I understand. I'm not complaining about women-only stuff. There are certain religions, of course, that separate men and women a lot of the time. So I'm not saying it's necessarily bad. All I'm saying is men don't have their own spaces to the same extent that women do in the modern Western world in 2026. Is that even a bad thing? Do men even need their own spaces like that? We'll come on to that. Have a think about it. Formulate your opinions. We'll come on to that later on in the stream, all right? But we're going to start off talking about boxing. So Liam Goff says Thomas Carty only changed his tune on a lot of things when he met Baby Ting. Okay, yeah, I remember about Thomas Carty. The only men-only space that I'm aware of that's relatively prevalent in the UK is Freemasonic lodges. Freemasonic lodges, for the most part, are still male-only spaces, aren't they? But what about people that don't want to join Freemasonic lodges? And anyway, I don't think they're open for anyone to join. We'll come on to that. Anyway, let's talk some boxing here. Groove into this tune. This was a tweet or a post put out by Devin Haney on X. He's talking about Floyd Schofield. Devin Haney has been known to have real itchy Twitter fingers over the years. I mean, I remember way back in the days, way back, Devin Haney put out some type of post on Instagram or Twitter, I forget which, but he basically claimed that Gervonta Davis slept with an extremely famous boxer's teenage daughter. I've mentioned who this extremely famous boxer is before. I'm being a little careful with my words right now in case it's defamatory to repeat the claims made by Devin Haney. But he definitely said it. I remember reading the tweet. I was like, wow, okay. So Devin Haney's known for this kind of thing. Here, he's saying Kid Austin, that's Floyd Schofield, Pops, his dad, took all his money and is giving it to his girlfriend and her kids, allegedly. So he's trying to protect himself there, but I'm not sure whether he can protect himself just by saying allegedly. There is such a thing as reckless endangerment of the truth. He says, I feel bad for that young kid working hard and his dad tricking it. I'm rich and my pop's rich. We don't share bank accounts or Instagrams. Is that why Floyd Schofield has been conspicuous by his absence over the past few months? He had that good win over Tevin Farmer where he stopped him in a round. And then we haven't heard anything since. Is there trouble at home? with the Schofields. What do you guys think about this? Shout out to Glum Coyote. He says, it is a current issue for me. I can't tread as much as I want if I live with my girlfriend. Okay, so I guess you mean domestically. You need more space. Telstar says women have their own spaces for gyms, and I've been told they're incredibly popular, so I can't see why men can't have the same. Well, when I was growing up, they used to have boys' clubs. Do they still have those? Anybody old enough to remember boys' clubs? These were like youth clubs, which were only for, obviously, boys, not girls. Anyone remember those? I mean, even the Cub Scouts, right? There was the Cub Scouts, the Girl Scouts, or the Girl Guides, excuse me. They were separate. Do adults need the same thing? Shout out to Glum Coyote for the super chat. He says he can't tread as much as he wants if he lives with his girlfriend. Big up Ocean Blue says, I feel like I joined halfway through a topic. We can double back. No problem. I've only just started the stream. Tony Yes says, when asked, Tim Burton said his marriage lasted so long because he and his wife lived in separate houses. I'm not sure whether he's being facetious or serious, but here's one thing I can tell you. Just for myself. And I've been like this for many years. I like to have separate bedrooms. I don't like to sleep in the same bedroom, never mind the same bed, the same bedroom as my girlfriend. And that's something which, because of all the programming from the media, unrealistic romantic movies and whatnot, that a lot of women are very resistant to. But in previous generations, that was quite normal. You know, you go back to like the 60s, the 50s, maybe even up till the 70s, depending on the country. It was a relatively common thing. I'm not saying it was the majority of people doing it, but it was relatively common for husband and wife to have separate bedrooms. And I think it's personally a good thing, you know? Being underneath each other the whole time could potentially lead to you getting sick of each other more quickly, you know? You separate, you have a little bit more space in the house between each other. There's an old saying, absence makes the heart grow fonder. And also, for a man, you like the allure of a woman. Do you know what I mean? You like that there's some kind of allure about her. When you're sleeping in the same bed, waking up, she got morning breath, and sometimes just keeping a bit of distance helps you remain attracted to her. Does that make sense? Shout out to Striker. He says, I'm exactly the same. I need a separate bedroom. I can't sleep in the same room as anyone. Yems Talks Boxing says, Schofield has been teasing the WBA title shot for a long time now. All right, so let's move on from this story then. Floyd Schofield. Let's talk about Spencer Brown This news came out a couple of days ago, or a day ago here. Spencer Brown's Gold Star set to lead promotion of Tyson Fury versus Arslanbek Makhmudov at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Here we have Spencer Brown. In fact, this isn't the most flattering picture of Spencer Brown. Let's get a better one up. There we go. That's Spencer Brown. You guys see him on screen? Now, the reason that this is interesting is because, again, originally, we were told, or there was some kind of conference call or whatever, where it was revealed that Zuffa Boxing would be promoting the show. Then there were people disputing it, saying, no, it's going to be a Ring Magazine show. And now, finally, we're hearing it's a Spencer Brown show. Why all the moving around? What is going on here? Well, somebody who finds it very interesting indeed is Eddie Hearn. You can see the headline here says, Eddie Hearn to listen with interest as British Boxing Board of Control confirm that April 11 is not a Zuffa promotion. During an interview with IFL TV on Thursday, March 12, when it was put to Hearn that Brown would be lead promoter on the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium event, he replied, is that confirmed though? Because Zuffa's Mark Shapiro came out on the investor call, which you can't lie on, and said, we are the promoter of Fury Makhmudov. Hearn went on to say, we'll be looking to get confirmation of that because it's quite important to us. Does that mean that Conor Benn is not fighting on a Zuffa card? Hearn, who is considering his legal position regarding Benn's move to Zuffa, has been working as a licensed promoter in Britain since 2012. He will know, therefore, that unless a promoter has a British license, he cannot be the lead promoter on a British event. He said, I don't want to interfere with an investor call where Mark Shapiro is telling investors and the market that they are the promoters of Fury Makhmudov, Hearn said. I could have told you at the time that they weren't, but it has now apparently been confirmed that they are not the promoters and Spencer Brown is the promoter. We're going to need confirmation of that. We will be pursuing that 100%. Robert Smith of the British Boxing Board of Control today, this is March 13, told Boxing Scene, as far as we're concerned, it is a Spencer Brown show. He is responsible for the show. He is our contact for the show. It is his show and nobody else's show. Couldn't be any more unequivocal and unambiguous than that. So if a representative of Zuffa like Dana White was going to work on the event in an official capacity, they would need to report to Brown? ? Robert Smith replied, Gold Star will be the lead promoters, but he can run the show in association with an American promoter, which is something we've seen many times. Top Rank, for example, have worked alongside Matchroom and Queensberry in the past, but on each occasion, the official promoter of the event is always the British promoter. The lead promoter on a British show must hold a British license. So, what exactly is Hearn insinuating here? If it isn't a Zuffa show, does that mean because of the way that Conor Benn was signed to Zuffa, apparently on a one-fight deal, apparently for $15 million, that Hearn has some type of recourse now to take action against Zuffa? Because Hearn has been suggesting and insinuating that the way the deal was done wasn't on the up and up. I'm sure you guys have seen the interviews as well. He says, I can't say too much and this and that, but we're going to explore our position, etc., etc. To me, it sounds like he's hinting at legal action. That's why I put a question at the end of the stream title, a question mark, at the end of the stream title. I'm not saying that he is suing Zuffa. I'm asking the question, is Eddie Hearn threatening to sue Zuffa? It appears to me that he's at least thinking about it. Is he getting ideas from Frank Warren. And, again, if it isn't going to be Zuffa, who maybe he threatens legally, will it be Keith Connolly instead? Telstar says, Spencer Brown looks like a leather armchair. Yeah, let's get that Spencer Brown picture up again. People like that. Not this, this Spencer Brown picture. This one. Here we go. Spencer Brown. So give me your reading, folks, on this situation with Zuffa and Eddie Hearn. What do you think's going on? Why is it so significant to Hearn that Spencer Brown is the promoter of the show and not Zuffa? Does it have ramifications for the deal that Conor Benn did with Zuffa? If he's not fighting on a Zuffa show, does that give Eddie Hearn legal recourse? Because he seems to indicate that as far as he was concerned, the way that the deal was done, the way he was approached, it was a one-fight deal for Benn to fight on a Zuffa show. But if it's not a Zuffa show again, maybe Hearn's got some ability then to sue them for whatever reason. Ed Ellaby says, Seller or Gold Star promotion? I'm not sure what you're asking. Oh, wow. Mark says, Usyk has been talking about entertaining the possibility of becoming president of Ukraine. That's wild. It's like Manny Pacquiao. Tony S says, Spencer Brown has horrible diction. He trips over his own words and his sentences hardly make any sense. You know, one thing I've discovered in life is that confidence and the ability to act rather than just procrastinate, to actually act on your intentions, is more important than being intelligent or being eloquent when it comes to making money. If you're somebody, even if you don't speak well, even if you're not the sharpest knife in the drawer, if you have confidence and you act on your intentions and you don't procrastinate and all that kind of stuff, you can go a long way in life. So I'm playing devil's advocate here a little bit for Spencer Brown. Yeah, he is a terrible talker without any shadow of a doubt. But apparently he's a relatively good operator, or else why would Luke Partridge have hired him as his manager? That's how Spencer Brown basically got into big time boxing. He was hired by Luke Partridge as a manager. Striker says boxing is a funny one. Boxing is funny. 1 minute grown men are holding hands and smiling. The next minute lawsuits are flying. That's a whole fact. Tony Yes says, I think a Conor Benn Harlem Eubank fight would have been more interesting than a Prograis fight from a commercial point of view. But he's already beaten the bigger Eubank, you know, so I'm not sure how much interest there'd be in that. Would there be more interest than a Prograis fight? I don't know. I mean, maybe, maybe not. I really don't know. All I can tell you is that my opinion on Harlem Eubank is he needs to take up tennis. To me, he don't come across like a boxer. You know, he comes across like some kind of tennis player to me. Okay, Summers Boxing says he'd want to see it. All right. Has Harlem Eubank fought since he lost to Jack Catterall? And he gave that bizarre post-fight interview where he said, I was just getting going. I had Catterall right where I wanted him. Shout out to Chainsaw. Telstar says gentrified Harlem. There you go. Mr. Lucas says, no, 100% there would be. There'd be interest, would there? Okay. Off the back of beating the big Eubank twice. Once. Fighting the big Eubank twice, but beating him the second time. Obviously, he was a shell of a man. Would there still be interest in Conor Benn fighting Harlem Eubank, who's not really that well known to the public? I don't know. I'm not coming down definitively on one side or the other. Tony S says, what do you think about Ade saying Zhang may be a possibility, maybe a possible fight for AJ in the summer? In his recent video, I personally think that's a very dangerous fight. Well, I just uploaded a video a couple of hours ago saying that, in my opinion, AJ is so vulnerable at this stage, especially after the terrible accident and one fight removed from being cleaned out by Daniel Dubois. I think he's so vulnerable at this stage that the next time you put him in there against anyone above journeyman level, there's a very real possibility that he gets not only beat but knocked out. I'm not saying it's a guarantee. I'm saying you put him in against anyone above journeyman level, there's at least a 30%, 35% chance he gets chinned. And if the goal is to fight Luke Partridge, why take that risk? I don't really see any solid reason to take such a risk. Doesn't really make sense to me. Because you go in there and you beat, let's say, somebody in the lower half of the top 10, top 15. You're not going to get any credit, and you're not going to earn that much money. So why not just, if you have to fight anyone before Partridge, fight the cream puff, knock him over, somebody on a similar level to Jake Paul again, and then go straight in with Partridge. Why risk anything? I mean, this fight between AJ and Partridge has been so long in the making, over a decade. Why put anything in the way that could risk it at this point? Because really, what is left in boxing for AJ? You know, just the Partridge, just a cash out now. He's totally over the hill. So it makes far more sense to just put him in the cash out against Partridge, see how he does. If he wins or does well, they can run it back for even more money. And AJ stands to gain a lot of credibility. Right or wrong, he stands to gain a lot of credibility from the Partridge fight if he does well or wins. Whereas he can't really gain anything from a Zhang fight, a Hrgovic fight. I mean, doesn't gain anything. So I don't really see the sense in fighting a Zhang or anything like that. If AJ was 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, yeah, fight Zhang. But at this stage of his career, he's so vulnerable coming off the back of that crash and getting knocked out by Dubois with a big long layoff and then a Jake Paul. It's like, bro, this guy is... Any fight now could be his last ever fight. You know what I mean? So if any fight could be your last ever fight, you might as well go for legacy defining ones. And anything in between should just be cream puffs when you're that vulnerable. That's what I think anyway. I agree with Chainsaw. AJ can't take a Zhang left hand. And look, AJ did beat Zhang fair and square in the Olympics. He dropped him. But that was a long time ago. A very long time ago. Shout out to Ali. Little Jacob, Ed Ellaby. What is this picture? That's Spencer Brown. Do you recognize him? Old no neck himself, Spencer Brown. Shout out to AJ. All right, let's move on to the final bit of boxing news then. Then we'll circle back and address that topical question that I asked at the start of the stream. So, the latest on the Muhammad Ali American Boxing Revival Act. I'm going to read from this article on Boxing Scene about it. Let me just get it up here. So you guys won't see what I'm reading, but I'm reading from an article on Boxing Scene, all right? So, it says, if you found that making sense of policy proposals to amend the Muhammad Ali Boxing Reform Act are difficult to wrap your head around, you're not alone. The Ali Act, which was built on the Professional Boxing Safety Act of 1996 and has been on the books since 2000, has been foundational in helping improve entrenched problems such as fighter safety and financial transparency in the sport. Currently, a bill known as the Muhammad Ali American Boxing Revival Act of 2026, MABRA, it's M-A-A-B-R-A, I'll refer to it as MABRA from here on in, is in the House and, according to some, would gut the Ali Act. Others submit that it will enhance and strengthen the best parts of the Ali Act. In any case, MABRA would introduce certain dramatic changes to the boxing landscape that could affect all parties involved in the sport. Boxing Scene on Wednesday reviewed the publicly available congressional records in an effort to distill these proposed changes. Rather than argue for or against its merits, we try to offer a coherent overview of MABRA and updates that explain where it currently stands. We ask and attempt to answer a few fundamental questions tied to the policy. What amendments does MABRA propose? What are the motivations for change? What are the latest revisions to the original bill? And what comes next? What the Muhammad Ali American Boxing Revival Act proposes. The MABRA bill proposing revisions to the Ali Act was introduced last July to the US House of Representatives and referred to the Committee on Education and Workforce. In January, the committee, chaired by Republican Representative Tim Walberg, marked up the bill, which passed 30-4 and was sent for amendment in February. Quote, this bipartisan bill would create an alternative system in boxing by permitting the formation of unified boxing organizations, UBOs, alongside the sport's existing sanctioning bodies, giving fighters more choice in how they compete. Wahlberg said through a press release after the January markup. More specifically, MABRA would allow promoters to form their own UBOs and obtain the power to create their own titles and manage their own rankings. At the same time, it would also make those promoters essentially exempt from many of the transparency protections that have long been in place to protect boxers. That right there is the big issue, okay? Because as it stands right now in America, and I always have to reiterate this, the Muhammad Ali Act never applied in the UK, right? It only applies in America. It's an American thing. But that act allowed fighters to see the financials of a boxing show. Who's getting what, where the money's going, etc., and what percentage they're getting. Without the Ali Act, it becomes opaque. The fighters can't see how much money the show's bringing in, what percentage they're getting, etc., etc. Anyway, I'll continue. Additionally, the bill includes an enhancement of medical and drug testing requirements in boxing and the restriction of sanctioning organizations and UBOs offering more than one belt per weight class. I mean, that's obviously a good thing, and many of the things in this MABRA are good, but there are some sinister things in there as well. It's like a spoonful of sugar makes the medicine go down type of thing. So, as I say, the bill includes an enhancement of medical and drug testing requirements in boxing and the restriction of sanctioning organizations and UBOs offering more than one title per weight class. That could serve to tidy up boxing's divisional hierarchies while also arguably diminishing the influence and the fees collected from fighters by boxing's traditional powers. What is driving the efforts to amend the Ali Act? MABRA was introduced last summer and is now being pushed in Congress because of the launch of Zuffa boxing and its desire to build a business model similar to that of the UFC, whose president is also Zuffa's founder, Dana White. Although the bill has received bipartisan support, its hurried arrival and the speed at which it is being hustled through the lawmaking process has raised some concerns among both watchdogs outside Congress and members inside the body itself. Under the section Additional Views, the latest House report on the matter, dated February 25, 2026, states, thanks to committee Democrats, the version of MABRA that was approved by the Committee on Education and Workforce on a bipartisan basis was significantly better than the introduced version. Committee Democrats are providing these additional improvements to the bill and continue to press for answers to relevant questions. Regrettably, the rush of this bill to the House floor has foreclosed the full consideration of the points laid out below. But even some Republican lawmakers weren't sold on the bill as it was initially introduced. In a section of the report entitled Unanswered Questions, Mark Takano had questions for Andy Foster, the executive officer for the California State Athletic Commission, about conversations he may have had with Zuffa, its partners or affiliates, regarding employment. There has been speculation that Foster may eventually be appointed to a powerful role within Zuffa or an oversight board with the ability to push forward the upstart promotions agenda. So that right there is quite disturbing, isn't it? An executive officer for the California State Athletic Commission being speculated that he might become a part of Zuffa. Anyway, it says Foster's communications with Zuffa and disclosures to the California State Athletic Commission weren't the only stones left unturned. In the conclusion of the latest report on MABRA's bill, ranking member Bobby Scott wrote, "It's not clear why the committee majority rushed to advance this legislation, especially given that all the questions for the record from Democratic committee members still have not been addressed by witnesses in the committee's one and only hearing on this topic, a workforce protection subcommittee hearing on December 4, 2025. Anyway, this is some of the good stuff that's in MABRA. It says, what are the key amendments to MABRA? Below is a paraphrased list of improvements cited in the latest report under subsections health and safety. economic security and opportunity for boxers and integrity of the sport. Number 1, ensuring qualified ringside caregivers with degree and certification requirements provided by the Association of Boxing Commissions and physician groups. 2, requiring boxing fight organizers to provide both an ambulance and emergency personnel on site. Now, in the UK, that's been standard for decades. Apparently in America, not so in every state. Number 3, increasing the new minimum coverage for match-related injuries from 25 grand to 50 grand. Number 4, adding a new requirement for $15,000 in accidental death coverage. Number 5, increasing the new minimum payment to boxers from $150 per round to $200 per round. Number 6, establishing consistent drug testing policies by adhering to World Anti-Doping Agency's list of tested substances and requiring drug tests for every title bout and at least half of other matches. Number 7, limiting sanctioning organizations and UBOs to awarding no more than 1 championship title per weight class and restricting interim circumstances. Number 8, require UBOs to specify a minimum payment for bouts in their contracts with boxers. Number 9, guarantee fighters at least 1 match every 6 months or a minimum payout. Number 10, limit contract duration to a maximum of 6 years. I mean, I've never heard of a contract longer than 6 years other than AJ's contract, which is life. I've lost which number it is here because they're not actually numbered. Am I on number 10? Additionally, the latest Marlborough report earmarked areas for further improvement, paraphrased below. So that was the amendments, and now these are the areas for further improvement. Establish a right for boxers under contract with a UBO to be able to challenge an assigned opponent that a boxer believes to be an unsafe mismatch. Requiring UBOs to cover the cost of deductibles for mandated health insurance. Encouraging public and occupational health researchers to harness medical data arising from professional boxing with an emphasis on brain health. Protecting boxers' ability to earn ancillary income through endorsement deals. Prohibiting a UBO from forbidding a boxer to train, prepare, or live in any state, for example, barring a boxer from residing in California. Regulating boxer ratings by UBOs, which Marlborough currently leaves unregulated. Using a pool of reporters free from business relationships with a UBO or similar objective criteria and appeals that apply to sanctioning organizations. Now, one of the things that I want to pick up on there is protecting boxers' abilities to earn through endorsement deals. Because the way I understand it, with UFC, it's not like boxing when it comes to endorsement deals. I saw Rampage Jackson talk about a deal that he nearly did with Reebok, but somehow it was blocked by the UFC, and then they did a deal with Reebok. Some shady sounding stuff like that. So some of these lawmakers clearly are not keen on Dana White going as far as he wants to go with this Marlborough. So we'll see what revisions happen. It says here, what's next for the Muhammad Ali American Boxing Revival Act? For all the polarizing opinions about Marlborough, including concerns of Zuffa building a UFC-like monopoly in boxing, and the costs of some of the changes detailed above likely to drive smaller promoters from the sport, and that's a very important thing as well there. There's so much stuff in there for promoters to adhere to, only giant promoters are actually going to be able to do it. So that's actually a step closer to monopolizing the sport, at least in the United States, right? So although a lot of the regulations sound good, it's going to potentially eliminate a lot of the promotional competition and move closer to monopoly, right? So anyway, it says, The bill has rallied bipartisan support. An individual called, is it Ilhan Omar? One of the lawmakers, an enthusiastic and educated boxing fan, has led the charge to bolster health, safety, and other fighter protections and place reasonable limits on the power of UBOs. But lawmakers, if not quite in lockstep, appear headed towards roughly the same destination. As Marlborough moves to the House floor for a majority vote, a representative from the Committee of Education and Workforce told Boxing Scene on Wednesday that the bill has not yet been added to Congress's calendar. It appears ready to coast ahead. If, as expected, Marlborough passes the House, it would require another majority in the Senate, 60 votes, before moving to the desk of the president. Given White's relationship with Donald Trump, some version of Marlborough, and likely one that closely resembles its current form, figures to become law as soon as the end of 2026. So, yeah, that was a lot to get through, but that's the latest on Marlborough, the Arley Act, in short. Shout out to everybody in the live chat. All right, so now we've got through all the boxing talk. We will double back to the question I asked at the start of the stream. For those of you who weren't here for the start of the stream, the question was, do men in modern Western society need their own spaces? And what I mean by that is, decades ago, public houses, otherwise known as pubs, were male-only spaces. Women, legally, were not allowed to enter pubs until the early 1980s. Now, as I said earlier on, they stopped enforcing that, I think, in the 70s, but it was still on the books legally until the early 80s. There used to be men-only, working men's clubs and stuff like that. Pubs were male-only spaces. Do men in the modern Western world need more of those? Women have got their own spaces, women-only gyms, entire apartment buildings where they only let the properties to women. All sorts of women-only things. Do men need the equivalent or not? Maybe they don't. What do you guys think? And if the answer is yes, explain why. And also if the answer is no, explain why. Let me know. MT says, yes, absolutely, it's crucial socially. You care to expand on that? Why do you say that it's crucial socially? Ali disagrees. He says, I don't think men need men-only spaces. Interested to hear why we should, though. I mean, for example, there are still like gender-specific schools, aren't there? There are certain schools for girls and certain schools for boys. Why do they have that? I always figured they have that because with mixed schools, there's a distraction there, particularly for the boys. Boys are more likely to get distracted by the opposite gender being there. Girls can get distracted too, but I think boys more so. And that distraction can lead to pregnancies and all sorts of stuff, right? It can also lead to boys fighting over girls, So I can understand why single-sex schools exist. I didn't go to a single sex school. I went to a mixed school. But yeah, is there such a need for things like that among adults? Saint Pepsi says no, because men cause this themselves by being creepy. So you're saying that men caused it themselves. So for example, they've got these apartment buildings in London which are female only. And you're saying that's as a result of men being creepy? I personally don't think so. I think that the reason it's easier for women to find accommodation in places like London is because of this innate perception that most people have that women are more trustworthy, that you're going to get less trouble from women. But certainly in somewhere like London, I don't think you have to be a landlord for that long to figure out that actually women can often give you more trouble than men when it comes to being tenants. And if you're talking about who's in danger, right? Well, men get attacked, obviously, by other men far more than women do. The vast majority of people that are victims of any kind of assault are men. Tallman says men will be less prone to showing off and egos coming into play. Summers Boxing says, I don't want to go to a pub just filled with blokes. I don't know how old you are, but your granddad, maybe your great granddad, they were certainly doing exactly that. They're going into pubs and it was only men in there. There were no women. Railway Unboxing fan says, I did hear they want a London Underground women's only carriage. To me, that's crazy. You know, to me, what they're doing with stuff like that is going way overboard in excluding men from things unnecessarily. To the point where men are almost second-class citizens. Like, it's mad. You know, my experience, especially when I was younger, I found it extremely difficult to actually manage to get a place to live. I had to go to so many different viewings. When I was in my 20s, I was obviously trying to get a room, rent a room in a house share, and then later on rent a flat. I had to go to so many. But then I talked to women I know, and they were able to get somewhere immediately. You know? So it's far more difficult for men, in a place like London at least, to actually get accommodation than it is for women. Landlords seem to be less trusting of men than they are of women. And when it comes to council flats, right, government housing, it's always been very much skewed in favor of women. Telstar says, I think in terms of something that would be helpful, I reckon men lack spaces where they can discuss. It would help massively with mental health, in my opinion. I mean, what do you guys think of the fact that, and this is still, for the most part, a male-only space, What do you think of the fact that Freemasonic lodges are, for the most part, male only? What do you think that's all about? Summers Boxing says, but what spaces do you guys want? Men already have sports and social clubs that are male only. Do they still have those? I'm not saying they don't. I'm just asking the question because it doesn't appear that they're as prevalent as they used to be back in the days. Okay, Neil Rigger says, the reason the manosphere was created is because men wanted their own space to talk. That's a good point. Tony S says, a lady I work with told me she went in a coffee shop with her friend and there were only men there, so they walked out. Summers Boxing says, yeah, like local football teams or rugby. When you were growing up, you go to a boxing, you was going to be all male. Well, even today, the majority of people in boxing gyms are male, but I am not aware of any exclusively male boxing gyms anymore. When I was a kid, there were still boys clubs. There were still like, gyms for boys and so, youth clubs for boys that were single gender, only for males. Tony S says, I saw a video of my local high street from the 1980s, and I was amazed to see how much happier everyone was, and there was no one who I saw that was obese. Well, yeah, what I can say about the 80s is that it was a much simpler time. And it's kind of like a machine, a car, for example. The more complicated it is, the more things can go wrong with it. And that's how you can look at society, as a metaphor, as an analogy. Society's more complicated now, isn't it? With the internet and social media, it's become far more complex. And therefore, there's more things that have gone wrong. Whereas back in the 80s, it was a simpler time. Life was more simple. Were people happier? Depends who you were, depends on your circumstances. But I would just say life was less complicated. I mean, certainly if you were a victim of one of the big layoffs, coal miner, factory worker, when they were doing all these massive layoffs during Thatcher's Britain, you wouldn't have been happy. You would have been stressed out. But even things like applying for benefits were a lot simpler back then. Applying for benefits, I don't know exactly what it's like today, but many years ago, when I applied for job seekers, as it was called then. Is it still called job seekers? You had to jump through hoops. Whereas back in the 80s, it was a lot simpler. Goozy says social media hasn't been good for society. Yeah, for me, the only thing social media has really been good for is stuff like this, forums for people to discuss things. That's good. And for making money. But in terms of socializing, making friendships, maintaining friendships, not that people can't do that on social media, they can, but I think it's done more harm than good, for sure. Because, of course, back in the days before social media, before the internet, before smartphones, before mobile phones of any sort, when we wanted to see our friends, we went round to their house, or we went to where they hang out, and we'd meet our friends there. It was a whole different mindset, you know? You were outside more. You went looking for your friends. If you couldn't find them one place, you'd roam around and find them somewhere else. You'd talk to people in the street. Have you seen so-and-so? Do you know where he's gone? You get a lot more knocks on your door from friends, you know, stuff like that. So before social media, we were far more sociable. We would talk to far more people. And because phone calls were expensive and there was no mobile phones back then, there was an incentive to actually be physically present with your friends or physically present with your family members. Whereas now people can just WhatsApp someone and then they don't end up actually seeing them physically. And that can go on for weeks, months, years, decades, you know? Yeah, social media is good for connecting with family overseas, that's for sure. 100%. Telstar says you could buck your boys anywhere. Barbershops, cafes, social clubs, etc. Even random trips to the West End. Summers Boxing says, do you think social isolation is bad? For most people it is, yeah, very bad. Not for everyone. You do get some people that thrive when they're socially isolated, but most people psychologically deteriorate. That's why they use social isolation as a punishment in prison, because it causes mental agony. Striker says, I can't remember the last time a friend randomly knocked on my door. Nor me. Nor me. And for those who are open to the possibility that we as human beings have senses beyond the 5 that we're told we have, you remember that before the days of smartphones and all that kind of stuff, when you'd hear a knock on your door, and it could be a number of people, it could be 10, 20, 30 different people knocking on your door. But when it was your best friend knocking on the door, you knew it was him. Do you know what I mean? You just hear the knock and you'd be like, yep, I know who it is. When the phone would ring as well, yeah, I know who that is. Railway Unboxing fan says, the last time a friend knocked on my door was like 20 years ago. Telstar says, and you knew when it was Jehovah. Yeah, the Jehovah's Witnesses. They always came mad early. Suited and booted. Summers Boxing says, signature knocks. Ali says, I wish I knew life without social media. Got my first iPhone when I was 10 years old. Yeah, it's wild now. It's wild. I would like to raise kids without social media, without smart devices. I guess it'll be extremely difficult, but I'd like to give it a go. Obviously, you're going to be the bad guy raising your kids without smartphones. I might resent you forever. But I want them to know and learn the real world. Because a lot of people don't really know the real world now. They live inside social media. The perception they get about the world is from social media rather than from real world experiences. Yeah, I had my first phone, mobile phone, cell phone, when I was about 17, something like that. That's when I got my first mobile phone. And this would have been in the 90s. All right, I was 17 in the 90s. JJ says technology has dumbed down our intuitive abilities. I would agree with that. When did I first use the internet? I think the first time I ever used the internet was in college. So I would have been around the same age. Around the same time when I got my first mobile phone. In fact, no. I think I got my first mobile phone when because I did I have a mobile phone in college? I think I did. Right towards the back end of college, I had a mobile phone. So I might have been 17, yeah, maybe 17 in college. And that was right around the first time I used the internet, was in college. So I would have been about 17 as well, yeah. And the internet back then was extremely basic. When I was in college, there were some of my classmates who were using chat rooms. So that was my first experience of the internet, was seeing my classmates going on these chat rooms and chatting to other people in chat rooms. But the internet back then was extremely primitive. Nothing like today. There was no social media. Chat rooms were a big thing. It was dial-up, so getting a web page to load took ages. Do you know what I mean? It was extremely primitive. And back then, the internet was not an integral part of people's lives. The internet was like a little novelty for most people. You know, it wasn't central to everyone's life the way it is today. Yeah, the internet was something you'd mess around with once or twice a week, if that. And then you go about your day, you know? The internet didn't become central to everyone's life until social media. I want to say after 2010, maybe. It wasn't until after about 2010 that the internet started becoming a core part of daily life. But prior to that, it really wasn't like that. Well, the first messenger that I ever used, you know, regularly, not on phones, but this was on computers, was MSN Messenger. And MSN Messenger, I swear to God, was still the best messenger ever. I don't know why they discontinued it. And I don't know why there's nothing on the same level as MSN Messenger today. I don't get it. MSN Messenger was like the greatest. I used to love the nudge feature on MSN Messenger. You guys remember that? The nudge? If someone weren't responding, you could like press the nudge and that bell thing would ring. Yeah, I had a pager. I had a pager before I had a mobile phone. That would have been 96 or so, 97. I had a green Motorola pager. That's right. Johnny Gaffer says, we used to rush home from school to log on to MSN Messenger. That's a whole fact. And you'd have loads of conversations that had built up. People nudging you. Ed Ellaby says, what was the pager connected to? Well, pagers were the weirdest thing because in order to send a message to a pager, you had to call up a call center. And you'd speak to someone on the end of the call center and tell them what message you wanted to send. Yeah. Until two-way pagers came out. Then you didn't need to go through the call center. But initially, one-way pagers, you could only receive messages on the pager. You couldn't send anything from it. And again, to send a message to a page, you had to call up some call center, tell them what message you wanted to send, and then they'd type it in and do it. Very primitive. Yeah, pagers were wireless. So they were connected via whatever, satellite or something. Mobile towers or whatever. We got Vengeance. Railway Unboxing fan says, Hatman, do you remember the box TVs? Yes, the old CRTV televisions, of course. Growing up in the 80s. In the 90s, of course. Star Fox says, anyone remember the old Ericsson phones where you could change the button faces? Well, Sony Ericsson were like the leading brand initially. But then Nokia took over quite quickly. And Nokia were the #1 brand for mobile phones for a long time. The way Nokia fell off has to be studied. Because they fell off hard. Now Nokia phones are trash. I mean, who the hell wants a Nokia? But back in those days, Nokia were cutting edge. Railway Unboxing fan says Tete is 37, not 50. Allegedly. Star Fox says the Nokia ringtone is iconic. Yeah. That one. NEC. Damn, I remember NEC phones. NEC, I think, were like the first video phones. The first phone where you could actually play like videos on them and stuff. I think that was the NEC. Yeah, Snake was a big game on those old school Nokias. The ones where you could switch out the cover. Everyone wanted to put a gold cover on the Nokia. And also, a lot of people made loads of money selling ringtones back then. People became millionaires off the back of making those basic little ringtones. 8-bit ringtones, you know? Kylie says Nokias are still the go-to burner. Is that right? Johnny Gaffer says, did you see a colleague calling out that Nigerian promoter who works with Khan saying he's wanted for not paying fighters? I didn't see that, but not a surprise really, is it? The hazards of boxing, but even more hazardous in Nigeria, you know? Apex Bossman is disputing it. He says, no, they're not. Nokias are obsolete. I think what was meant is that the old school Nokias are still the go-to burner phones. Literally the ones from the early 2000s that don't have smartphone capability, no camera, all that kind of thing. Don't even have internet. Big up GMS Nightmare. He says, David Hay versus Zerdo, Breedis, Benavidez, and Jai. I'd certainly take David Hay over Zerdo. I'd take David Hay over all of those guys. The only one I'd hesitate is Jai. I'd probably pick Hay over Jai too, but I don't know, Jai's got speed, he's got power, he's vicious. I don't know. I'd probably pick Hay over all of them, but with the Jai one, I'm sure Jai could hurt David Hay, and he's fast, you know, so that's my take on that. Big up GMS Nightmare. Apex Bossman says UK is 4 and 5G only now. Yeah, but those old phones still work though, because they didn't have internet at all. So all you could do is, I don't think there was any kind of G. What were those phones? They were just, are you saying those phones don't work now? I assume they did. Yeah, Goozy says Nokia still work fine, calls and texts only. But that's all, those old ones like the 3210, that's all they did anyway. There was no internet. Or was there? Was there internet? Was there a really primitive web browser on the Nokia 3210? Maybe there was. But certainly the original Nokias, like the first Nokia I had, there was no internet on it. It wasn't until several years later that they started introducing these really primitive browsers. Dominica says they do work. Apex Bossman says you don't get service. All right, so there's a big debate breaking out here. Tony Yes says the Nokia 7110 from the Matrix movie was so cool. Dominica says, I use it on the regs. The box says fake news, they work fine. Yeah, I assumed they would work all right, but I don't have one of those phones, so I couldn't tell you for certain. Apex Bossman says, mate, I got a bunch of old phones. They don't get service no more. I'm forced to use a smartphone. Is it possible that it depends on the network? Maybe some networks support those old phones and others don't? Is that possible? Because there are so many different networks in the UK. There's all the old school ones like what are T-Mobile called now? I forget what they're called. They're called something else, isn't it, T-Mobile? Forget what the hell they're called. Originally, T-Mobile was called 1-to-1. What's T-Mobile called now, guys? I've forgotten. EE, thank you. So there's EE, there's Orange, there's Vodafone, there's, is it Vox or something? There's Labara, there's GIFGAF, there's Tesco. There must be at least 30 different mobile networks in the UK. So as far as the old school phones, maybe it depends on the network you're using. Maybe some networks don't support them and others do. 3, Leica, yep. Smarty Mobile. Okay, somebody says Orange isn't about no more. Is that right? Yeah, Tesco, yep. Oh, I see. So Orange and T-Mobile merged and it's now EE. Okay. O2, yep, there's O2. I remember when O2 launched. Shout out to Gandhi. Kylie says the future is no longer orange. Apex Bossman says, remember people being able to tune into police radios? How did people get caught back in the day with no cameras and everything on notepads? JG says, yo, Hatman, did you recommend reading a book called Without Conscience? Just started. Yes, I did. That's by Dr. Robert Hare. Book about psychopathy. Tony S says the future was indeed orange, because now you got the orange man in the White House. Shout out to Atavistic Intellect in the place. I'm using a different microphone for this stream. I'm not sure if you guys noticed the difference. It's a lot, to use audio terminology, it's a lot brighter than the mic I normally use. Well, I use a couple of different, I've used the inbuilt MacBook mic for a lot of streams, but the main one I use, or at least a lot of the time I use for streams, is the SM7DB, which is like a ubiquitous podcasting microphone. And it's quite a dark sounding mic. This mic that I'm using now is much more airy. It's got a lot more top end on it. I like this beat. What do I think of David Icke? I think that he's a very interesting thinker. He's an interesting man. That's what I'll say. His perspectives aren't particularly unique, but he synthesizes a lot of different information quite well. Summers Boxing says, have you ever been to any live boxing events? Like big ones? Not for many years, but I've been to obviously many boxing events over the years. Amateur shows, professional shows, loads of small hall shows. Kylie says, former goalkeeper. Okay, my uncle used to have one of those old school CB radios. Okay. Dub session music, yep. Yeah, York Hall is the GOAT of small halls in the UK. York Hall is the GOAT. There is no better small hall that I've ever been to in Britain than York Hall. York Hall is absolutely the GOAT. He says, what about Copperbox? Well, Copperbox is not a small hall. It holds like, is it 7,000 or something? Whereas York Hall is literally a small hall. It holds, what is it? 1,000 people, if that, in York Hall? GMS Nightmare says, did you consider Botswana and Namibia as countries to move to? I did. One of the reasons I didn't elect to go to Botswana or Namibia is because of westernization. I I wanted to move somewhere that is still like socially and politically conservative, which Botswana and Namibia are not. GMS Nightmare says, I'm going to Botswana next month. That's why I asked. So, I've never been to Botswana, but I know many people who have. And what I can tell you is that it's a relatively safe country. It's quite developed. It's not as cheap as some other countries in Southern Africa. And that's always the trade-off. You know, when you move somewhere that has all the infrastructure and it's safe, you're going to be paying more. So yeah, Botswana, relatively safe, good infrastructure, not particularly cheap by Southern African standards. I mean, for example, South Africa has great infrastructure, but it's very dangerous, which is why it's cheap. Or one of the reasons why it's cheap. Tallman says they've been squeezing 1,500 people in York Hall of late. Done some alterations, apparently. Is that right? Yes, I have been to the O2 Arena. Been to the O2 Arena and the Millennium, do they still call it the Millennium Dome? For those who don't know, the O2 Arena is inside what used to be called the Millennium Dome, but do they call it the O2 Dome now or something? Do they call it something else? But the O2 Arena sits inside of that. And inside the Millennium Dome, as we used to call it, there's loads of like restaurants and bars, and there's even is there a couple of nightclubs in there? Might be a couple of nightclubs. Cinema, there's all sorts of stuff in there apart from the arena, apart from the O2 Arena. Been there many times. Have I come across a channel called Lord? He travels all over Africa and shows the nightlife and the dating scene. No, I haven't come across that channel, but there are loads of other channels that do similar things. But I haven't come across that channel in particular. What do I think of Charlie Veach? I don't know who that is. I don't really follow any of those traveling YouTubers religiously, but I know some of them. There's one guy, whose videos I watched a few of over the past few years, called Check in Effect. He's done a lot of traveling in, well, all over the world, but extensively in Africa. Check in Effect. He traveled in Latin America as well. Johnny Gaffer says, Check is my guy, proper good YouTuber. Fight Sport Talk says, has Eddie been through a lawsuit like this? Well, there's a question mark at the end of the title, so I'm not saying that Eddie Hearn is suing Zuffa, but he seems to be insinuating that he might. He seems to be suggesting that he might sue somebody over this Conor Benn deal. And who else could he be suing other than Zuffa? They're the ones that signed him. Either Zuffa or Keith Connolly, who's Conor Benn's manager, his new manager. He said he doesn't want to work with Keith Connolly ever again. So Eddie Hearn is considering his position, and he keeps insinuating that he might get legal if he can prove that things weren't on the up and up with the Conor Benn deal. Oh, okay. Fight Sport says, I mean, if he did sue them, I know what you meant. Has he ever... No, he wouldn't have ever sued anyone as big as this. Definitely not. But then again, who has, you know? Frank Warren's never sued anyone as big as TKO and Sella. I mean, not that he's put in the lawsuit yet, but he's sent legal letters telling them of his intention, of his threat. Lieutenant Frank says, I've heard a few times that Kakachi is extremely highly thought of amongst boxers from spars. Do we know why he's such a late bloomer? Apparently he's 37 fighting Dickens tomorrow. Yeah, some guys just mature at a different rate, you know? They don't get it all together until later on in their careers. I mean, even me, in my amateur career, I always feel like I peaked as far as technique and just being comfortable in the ring and understanding my style and my attributes and strengths and all that kind of stuff. I peaked several years after I stopped boxing competitively. Probably in my early 30s, mid 30s is when I felt like, okay, I'm much better now than I ever was in my 20s. With Kakachi, it's even more extreme than that. The guy's in his late 30s, he might be peaking now. Yeah, because there's your physical peak or your athletic peak, and then there's your technical and mental peak. Obviously, ideally, you want all of those three peaks to converge and happen at the same time. You want your technical, physical, and mental peak to happen simultaneously. But with a lot of fighters, or at least some fighters, that isn't the case. They'll reach their physical peak very young, but the technical and mental peak not until much later. And it isn't until they reach those peaks that you'll see the best form of their career. Guzzi says, if Conor don't get 15 mil for Prograis, then Eddie sues, in my opinion. Yeah, that seems to be what he's insinuating, because he had matching rights. But if he was under the impression that that 15 mil was for one fight and it wasn't for one fight, then maybe he has grounds to sue. Right? Because matching 15 mil for one fight, that's a hell of an ask. Whereas matching 15 mil for 3 fights, you know, it would have been much easier to get that kind of money from DAZN to do it, or even exceed it. So yeah, if it ends up being not just 15 mil for the Prograis fight, but for a multi-fight deal, then you could have a serious case there. Railway and Boxing fan has got Chisora beating Wilder, so do I. I think Chisora wins the fight. Guzzi says Eddie is waiting till after the fight. Shout out to Michael Schiller. Over there in Inverness, he says, what do you think about Frank and Coogan mockingly jibing about boxing isn't dead because of 2 good months coming up, while Small Hall has vanished to a point? To be honest, people are always saying boxing is dead. In the 90s, they were saying boxing is dead. So, boxing is dead is like a never-ending thing. I don't think there's ever been a time that I can remember where there wasn't someone somewhere saying boxing's dead. So I don't really pay too much attention to it. All I'll tell you is that boxing has peaks and troughs, highs and lows, you know? In my lifetime, the lowest point for boxing was during the Klitschko Mayweather, excuse me, during the Klitschko and Mayweather era. For me, that was a low point for boxing in my lifetime. And American boxing has never really recovered from that era. Because back then, the whole boxing scene in America revolved around Floyd Mayweather and Manny Pacquiao, and nobody else got a look in. It revolved around their rivalry, basically, you know? Another thing I don't really understand, a mentality I don't really understand, is these, I'm going to call them wannabe hardcores, who criticize any fighter that has hype behind them. It's as if the only fighters that they think are legitimate and actually any good are fighters that come from complete obscurity. Fighting on small hall shows, untelevised shows, no big promoter behind them, you know, promoted by Mick Hennessy or something. And only then can you be taken seriously as a prospect coming up. If you've signed to Eddie Hearn, oh well, right away you must be a hype job. You can't be any good. Even if you're a Warren fighter, if you've got any kind of promotion behind you, well, you're clearly a hype job, clearly chinny, no good. They instantly dismiss you. These weird individuals have this bizarre obsession with having some secret or hidden knowledge about this diamond in the rough prospect somewhere, fighting on untelevised small hall shows, and it's like, give it a rest. The best talent normally in boxing are fighters that have extensive amateur backgrounds and they're signed up by the big promoters very quickly. Yeah, occasionally you get a Fabio Wardley, you get somebody that comes out of obscurity and rises to the top of boxing, but that's not the norm. The norm is for the guys who are the best in the amateurs, they end up being the best in the pros. That's what usually happens. And those guys get signed up, they get snapped up by the big promoters and they get a big promotional push and all that kind of stuff from early on. So, yeah, I don't understand them weird wannabe hardcores and don't understand the mentality. It's very odd. As soon as someone signs with Eddie Hearn or a big promoter and there's a big push, but he's a hype job. He's no good. And you know, a lot of those weirdos, they gravitated towards Luke Partridge. You know, when Partridge was still with Hennessy? So that was like the blueprint for these weirdos. You had to have come up the hard way on Hennessy shows, small hall and fighting in leisure centers. If you weren't doing that, you're no good. Shades of Ali, yeah, Huey Fury. You know, during that time when the Partridge fanboys got totally carried away, they were acting like Luke and Huey were going to reign like the Klitschko brothers. Huey was going to be this dominant champion next to his cousin, Luke. Neil says, my friend was a massive Partridge fan also. And them guys are so weird. Exactly that, Striker. The wannabe hardcores want to convince everyone that they know something everyone else doesn't. Vengeance says Dana White is just a shareholder in the company. And maybe that's why Dana White is more focused on Zuffa now than he is on UFC. I mean, that's what Ronda Rousey said the other day. You know, when Ronda Rousey was laying into the UFC and Dana White. She's fighting on a Jake Paul show. Is that right? Don't know who she's fighting. But yeah, the press conference the other day, she was laying into Dana White saying he's just an employee. Doesn't run anything at the UFC. He's just the front man. That's right, Ganzoy. He says, you just wait till Huey gets his man strength, Hat Man. He's still a baby. How old is Huey now? Is he 32, 33? Yeah, Frotch, of course, came up under Mick Hennessy, the fat controller. Frotch always used to say Mick Hennessy was the best promoter in the world. You guys remember that? Best promoter in the world, Mick Hennessy. He always used to say that. Railway Unboxing fan says 31. Okay. Summers Boxing says, I do rate Huey, to be fair, he's a good boxer. I think watching Huey Fury fight is like watching paint dry on a good day. And I think Huey's best days are long behind him. Because the past few times I watched him, he looked absolutely terrible. He doesn't have the movement anymore, you know? He doesn't have that foot speed he used to have. And of course, he's been plagued by ill health for most of his career. I mean, I've never seen a heavyweight pull out of so many fights. Hughie Fury has got the immune system of like a 95-year-old or something. It's crazy. He's just plagued with ill health most of his career. Yes, Mick Hennessy is the father of Francesca Hennessy. That's right. Mick the Fat Controller from Thomas the Tank Engine. Linkage says, I think Hughie got jobbed by Parker. It's been so long since I saw that fight, I couldn't even comment. But I don't remember being outraged by the decision at the time. I just remember Mick Hennessy being outraged, saying, "Shades of Ali," and all that. What's going on with Tommy Fury? I got no idea. Ever since he pulled out of the Darren Till fight, he's gone missing. And when you pull out of a fight with basically no excuse or no reasonable excuse, who's going to want to put you on their show again? He burned the bridge there. Shout out to Ali for the super chat. Much appreciated. Yeah, similar thing with Hughie Fury. Because he pulls out of so many fights, which promoter is going to want to put him on their show? I have literally never in my life seen a heavyweight pull out of so many fights as Hughie Fury. It's crazy. So Ganzoy says, when you move back and basically run the entire fight, you cannot complain, in my opinion. Even if you land more, it's just a bad look. Glum Coyote says, I heard an interview with Prograis. He seems very confident. Is he delusional? Well, if you're going to fight somebody, you have to be confident. That just comes with the territory. You know, unless you're a journeyman or something, I mean, you have to be confident going into a fight. You have to convince yourself that you can win. So there's nothing unusual about Prograis, you know, acting very, very confident. He's supposed to. He's supposed to convince himself that he can win the fight. Unless he's just turning up for a paycheck. Like I say, that's what he's supposed to do. So, fighters talking confident is the norm, you know? Summers Boxing says, don't sleep on Prograis. I think Prograis is going to get wrecked. He's got no chin anymore. He can't take a punch. Anytime his chin gets touched, even by somebody that doesn't have power, he's all over the place. Don't get it twisted. If Prograis pulled off an upset, it would be poetic justice. And sometimes life works like that, doesn't it? Conor Benn just got through the whole PED thing, beat a zombie, formerly known as Chris Eubank Jr., then celebrated afterwards like he won undisputed, turned down, a fight for the IBF title because apparently he don't do catch weights when he just made Chris Eubank Jr. do a catch weight. Left Eddie Hearn for his main rival, Dana White. He's been moving dastardly, Conor Benn. So it kind of would be poetic justice for him to go in his first Zuffa fight against Prograis and lose. Sometimes things work like that, but if I'm looking at it not from a karmic perspective, but just where both guys are at in their careers and weighing everything up, strengths and weaknesses, the weight class and all that kind of business, this fight is going to be at 150. I just think Conor Benn's going to wreck him. He's going to wreck him. I think poor Prograis is going to be all over the place. I think Conor Benn will stop him. Why am I so convinced? Because of the size, for one. Prograis is a career 140 pounder. He's old. He's taken a lot of punishment. He's got no punch resistance anymore. This fight is not even at 147, it's at 150. All the advantages are for Conor Benn. I mean, like I say, Prograis just cannot take any kind of punch anymore. So, Guzzi says, if Jojo Diaz got to Prograis, so will Conor. Yep, that's the way I see it. I think Prograis is washed. And he's fighting way above his weight class. I just think he's a fall guy here, you know? He's been brought in as cannon fodder. I see this as a marginal step up from the Chris Algieri's of the world, to be honest. It's like Conor Benn picking up where he left off last time he fought at 147. Again, this is at 150, not 147, but the last time he fought at 147 was the Algieri fight, right? Or was it the Van Heerden fight? I forget which came first, but yeah, it's as if he's picking up after Algieri. That was another former titleist at 140. He knocked him out in 2 rounds. Now he's fighting another washed up 140 former world champion in Prograis. I don't think he'll knock him out as quickly as he did Algieri, but yeah, I expect him to win. And poor Prograis to be flopping around the ring. Linkage says, who's the favorite in the Benn versus Rolly fight? That's a good fight. That's a good fight. Let's see how Benn looks against Prograis. Obviously, Rolly has fought at a much higher level, and he succeeded at a much higher level. But Rolly's vulnerable too. You know, I remember what Pitbull Cruz did to him. So, I don't know, I'd lean towards Rolly, but we need to see more of Benn. Shout out to Ali for the super chat. He says, Dubois will beat Fabio Wardley, mark my word. Yeah, I've spoken previously about this fight. Daniel Dubois, Fabio Wardley. And everything in my analytical boxing mind is telling me that Daniel Dubois should win the fight. But I've been here so many times before with Fabio Wardley, where I've thought everything in my analytical boxing mind is telling me Wardley's going to lose here, and he ends up winning. I thought Parker would beat him, you know? It's like, I've picked against Fabio Wardley so many times, I'm scared to do it again. So, I hear you, Ali. Again, in my mind, when I analyze the styles and the attributes, the technique of both guys, I'm like, Dubois is going to win the fight. You know? But Fabio Wardley has the magic touch, doesn't he? He's like King Midas. He shouldn't win a lot of these fights, but he does. He's just got something about him where he can pull it out the bag. So I completely understand where you're coming from, Ali. I'm just scared after being proven wrong by Wardley so many times. I'm scared to pick against him. Even though I feel like I should. Because I think about Dubois' jab and I'm like, man, that jab is going to give Wardley all sorts of problems. That bounce he has, you know, Dubois comes in and he bounces back and forth and then he sticks that jab on you, walks you down, starts unloading the hooks. Shout out to Ali for the super chat. He says, Dubois is a live one in a real fight. Completely agree. Yeah, Dubois is very, very live. I think Dubois is better than Wardley in most areas, to be honest. From a technical perspective, he's better in most areas. One area where I'd say Wardley's better is, you know, he's more fluid with head movement and stuff like that, like rolling with punches. He's better at that. But I think Dubois got better footwork overall, better balance, got a better jab. His combinations are a bit neater, you know? He's just a better boxer, Dubois. He boxes better than Wardley does. Wardley's faster. He's got quicker hands and stuff. Maybe quicker feet. Actually, I don't know about the quicker feet. We'll see on the night. Because Dubois' feet are deceptively fast. But from a technical perspective, I'd say Dubois is better in most areas. But Wardley is a natural-born fighter. You know, he has those instincts that you really can't teach. He reacts in a particular way when he's under pressure. And it's got him out of jail so many times. Goozy says, some people still think Dubois has quit in him. I don't think so myself. You don't think Dubois has quit in him? Please expand on that. I mean, Dubois has quit multiple times now. But as I've said previously, my take on Dubois is that he quits when he's getting hit a lot and he can't land his own punches back. When he's getting hit a lot, but he is landing his own punches back, he can stay in there. But when he's being frustrated on the end of a jab, being peppered, and he can't land his own shots, he just goes into mental meltdown. We've seen it several times now. That's the issue. Big up Glum Coyote for the super chat. He says, I'd like to see Wardley versus Opataya. That'd be a great fight. And you know, I'm not sure if I've addressed this in any of the videos I've done about this fight, but isn't it interesting that Fabio Wardley chose Daniel Dubois as an opponent? Do you guys find that interesting? Out of all the people he could have picked, he selected Daniel Dubois. They did spar back in the days, and apparently Dubois got the better of it, but that's, you know, when Wardley was really a proper novice. Remember, this guy had no amateur fights. But Wardley being Wardley, not deterred by that at all, and he obviously sees something. Maybe his team sees something, because he handpicked Daniel Dubois as an opponent. Will it backfire? We'll see, but it's just interesting to me that he picked him. Summers Boxing says demolition job by Dubois. Could be. I mean, I can see it. Because Wardley isn't exactly difficult to hit, is he? And he's never fought anyone with the kind of power of Daniel Dubois. This will be the first time that Wardley's been in there against a real world-class puncher. And as I said earlier on, Dubois breaks down mentally, not when he's in a firefight. He's fine in a firefight. When he's getting hit with a lot of shots, but he's managing to hit you back, he's fine in situations like that. It's when he can't land his own shots back. That's when he breaks down mentally. Can Fabio Wardley put Dubois in that position where he's hitting Dubois and he's able to avoid Dubois' shots over a number of rounds? Is Wardley really skilled enough to be able to do that? I doubt it. But again, because Wardley's proved me wrong so many times, I'm scared to pick against him. So I'm really conflicted on this fight. I feel like I should pick against Wardley because when I break the fight down in my head, I think surely Dubois is going to win. But Wardley's got the X factor. What can I say? We got Ali for the super chat. He says, and the new. Little Jacob says Dubois isn't adaptive reactive. Yeah, Dubois is a one-track fighter. He can only fight the one way, really. If you've seen Dubois in his back foot, it's almost laughable. He has done it a little bit against Kevin Lorena. He got on his bike. And at moments in the first Usyk fight, he was on the back foot a little bit. He's not particularly effective on the back foot. So he's a one-track fighter. He comes forward and throws his hands. Big, strong guy. Heavy jab. Bounces in and out before he pounces. But Fabio Wardley is more of a true boxer puncher. Dubois is more of a puncher, but Wardley's more of a boxer puncher. He attempts to box. He's not the greatest at it, but he does do, a fair bit of boxing. Looks to set up the big right hand. Slips and slides, moves his head, tries to roll with the punches, but gets caught clean plenty as well. Here's what I'll say. Even if Wardley wins this fight, I think we're going to see him get dropped for the first time in his career. So even if Wardley wins, I think he'll have to get up off the floor to win the fight. Because Dubois is very formidable, especially in the early rounds, the way he attacks you. Goozy says, both on win streak, so interesting fight. Well, no, Dubois is coming off a loss. Dubois is coming off a knockout loss to Usyk. And the turmoil in camp. Firing Don Charles. Going to Tony Sims. Firing him, then going back to Don Charles. A bit weird, isn't it? Yeah, it is mad getting a title shot off the back of a loss. A knockout loss at that. A knockout loss in a title fight in one-sided fashion, then gets another title shot right off the back of it. It is mad. Shouldn't be happening. That's a good point, to be fair. Dubois did KO AJ on the back foot. He did. That's a good point. But AJ was very, very reckless, you know. Very, very reckless. Big up Glum Coyote for the super chat. He says, I believe men know how to make pleasant conversations. Women don't know how to leave themselves to converse beyond emotional interest and self-centered topics. That's interesting. And you know what? That's a good point. Women do like those kind of, you know, gossipy topics and trivia. Women are preoccupied with trivial stuff, whereas men tend to enjoy having more deep, philosophical conversations, talking about politics, religion, spirituality, society, economics, sociology, history. So yeah, men like to get deep when we talk. So I guess what you're saying is maybe men need their own space for stuff like that. Because when women are in the same space as men, maybe men dumb themselves down a bit in order to incorporate the women into the conversations. Interesting point, Glum Coyote. Maybe men need space to talk about serious stuff. To ask the big questions. Big up Ali for the super chat. He says, forgot Anthony Kakachi is fighting on Saturday. Yeah, he is. There's Jazza Dickens over there in Ireland. That's right, Goozy. Uppercut from distance. It was unbelievably reckless by AJ. But I can understand why he was that reckless, because he'd been getting a terrible pasting for the whole fight. He finally got one bit of success, and he was desperate to finish it. So, even though it was horribly reckless, I understand the way he was feeling. Do you know what I mean? His first bit of success in a fight that was going horribly wrong. So yeah, Dubois did land that shot. He did knock out AJ on the back foot, but generally, Dubois is pretty useless on the back foot. He's stiff coming forward, but going back, he's even more clunky. Dubois is far more effective when he's coming forward. In most cases. Summers Boxing says, one of the best British fights I've seen. Wasn't expecting it at all. Which fight is that? Which fight are you referring to? Summers Boxing says Dubois AJ. I'm surprised at that, bro. It was a one-sided fight. Maybe you didn't expect it to go the way it did, so it was kind of dramatic or entertaining. But in terms of like good fights, I don't think of Dubois AJ as a good fight. It wasn't competitive aside from like 10 seconds. Or 5 seconds or something. And that was like a one-sided beatdown. Yeah, I thought AJ was going to win too. It didn't go the way I expected it to go at all. Although I did say all along that if AJ can't hurt Dubois and stop him in his tracks early, then Dubois will probably steamroll him. But I was confident that AJ would hurt Dubois early. Obviously he didn't. And he did get steamrolled. I haven't seen the movie Goat yet. My thoughts on Kelly Pavlik, the Ghost. He had those good wins, Jermaine Taylor. But then Hopkins took him to school. His time at the top was short-lived, wasn't it, Pavlik? He was a decent fighter in his day, but a little bit of a flash in the pan. So Benjamin says, Kakachi ducked Ford so bad, yuck. What's going on with Ray Ford at the minute? Because ever since he moved up in weight, Ray Ford was looking dangerous. But I haven't heard anything about him in quite a while now. One indication that AJ is still a traumatized fighter is the fact that he has mothballed one of his best punches, which was his left hook. Dwyer keeps talking about this, and I can't agree more. AJ used to have one of the best left hooks in the heavyweight division. But ever since the Andy Ruiz fight, the first fight, he's mothballed it. He's terrified of throwing it again. And that's indicative of the kind of personality he has, He's a skittish kind of personality. He gets spooked easy. And yeah, he's just mothballed that punch. Barely throws the left hook anymore at all. He used to lead with it very effectively. Even in that first Ruiz fight, in the first 2.5 rounds, he was leading with a left hook effectively. The mistake that he made was after he got hurt, his legs weren't the same, his timing weren't the same, and he kept leading with a left hook after that and getting caught. But that's because he was hurt, right? Earlier on when he was fresh, he was leading with a left hook and he wasn't getting caught. That's what scored him the knockdown. Well, actually, it was an uppercut first, then a left hook. But still, that left hook he used to throw was a beautiful shot. Barely throws it anymore. He's doing himself a disservice mothballing that punch. Big up Glum Coyote for the super chat. He says, it is a point made by Oakenshaw. Exactly, men need their spaces to reach universalism. And women don't feel the subtle melody of conversation revolving around universalism and singularity at a unique pace. That's very poetically put. When you go to places like India, for example, you get these hermits, these individuals who go live up in the mountains or out in the forest by themselves. And it's primarily men who do that. Sometimes you get women that do it as well, but it's overwhelmingly men. A lot of foreigners go to places like India and other parts of Asia, and they do that because men generally are far more concerned with the big questions than women are. Women are far more involved in day-to-day stuff that they see immediately in front of them. Men are better at abstract thinking, you know, thinking about the big picture, thinking about society at large, our origins and all this kind of business, you know? Whereas you talk to most women about that kind of stuff and they just glaze over, they're not interested, they find it boring. Some men find it boring too, but I want to say the majority of men are somewhat interested in those kind of topics. Oh, you meant Giant, the Nassim movie? No, I haven't seen it. It looks so cringe. I'm not sure if I want to see it, to be honest. Shout out to Glum Coyote, much appreciated for the super chat. A very poetic comment. Pick up Ali, he says, he used it against Otto Wallin. Barely, bro. When he was finishing Wallin off, he landed a few left hooks, but the Wallin fight was mostly a right hand fest. Straight right hands to the body, right hands up top. It was towards the end of the fight that the left hook started coming in. But he barely used it against Franklin. Barely used it against Hellenius, if at all. Didn't really use it against Ngannou. Did he use it against Jake Paul? Barely, it was all right hands. He's abandoned the punch, mothballed it. Glum Coyote says, I wrote my philosophy PhD and I had a unique female comrade. You did a PhD in philosophy? That's interesting. And I have to imagine there are far more male philosophy students than female ones. Men generally are far more interested in things like that than women are. Ali says the left hook won him the fight. That's what shook him. I'd have to go back and watch it, but I remember him throwing loads and loads of right hands in that fight. Yeah, towards the end of the fight, he landed a left hook. I remember that, but they were few and far between. And he landed that left hook at a point where he had Wallin so thoroughly beaten, he felt like it was safe to throw it. Back in the days, he would just throw it. You know, it was like an instinctive punch. Even in the amateurs, I saw AJ knock people out with that left hook. He'd often throw it as a check hook. But now it's like a massively neglected punch for AJ. He barely throws it at all. Kylie says Wallin was beaten before he stepped in the ring with AJ. Well, according to Richie Woodall, AJ used to dominate Wallin so much in sparring that AJ ended up having to hold back in a lot of the sparring sessions and carry Wallin through them. And they sparred apparently hundreds of rounds. And AJ was just so dominant that he was having to hold back and, you know, like I say, take it easy on Wallin just to get through the spar, to help him get through the spars. So that obviously carried through into the fight. AJ was very confident because, you know, he knew Wallin's style inside out, and he knew that Wallin didn't have anything for him. Shout out to Ali for the super chat. He says, check it out again, end of the fight. Big. Yeah, I've acknowledged that, Ali. I remember he landed a left hook at the end of the fight. But what I'm telling you is he barely threw any left hooks in the fight. You look at how long did that fight go? Was it 4 rounds, 5 rounds? He was spamming right hands. And I only remember at the very end of the fight, there was the left hook. But for the most part, he was and that was when Wallin was clearly there for the taking. Other than that, it was a right hand fest. Whereas you look at that first Ruiz fight, AJ was throwing loads of left hooks. In the second round, he was leading with a left hook beautifully. He sent the spray flying from Ruiz's head with that lead left hook. And of course, he dropped him with a left hook. So he used to use the left hook so much. It was such a natural punch for him. But after that Ruiz fight, yeah, he mothballed it. He barely uses it now. Truth Channel says, you have to respect Wardley asking to fight Dubois over other heavyweights. Wouldn't have gone that route. And that's why it's so interesting, isn't it? Why did he choose Dubois? What does he see? What does he know? Or is it a miscalculation? We'll find out in a few weeks. Benjamin says, he said he don't rate Dubois' hand speed. I think Dubois is deceptively fast. Yeah, he doesn't have lightning hand speed, but he's got quick feet. And because he's got quick feet, when he throws his punches as he's moving in, it accelerates the hand speed. Does that make sense? So if he's standing still and he just throws his hands, yeah, they can look a bit slow. But he's often not doing that. He's often moving his feet forward and throwing his shots at the same time. So it accelerates the speed of the punch. That's why I think he's deceptively fast. He does that a lot with his jab. He'll bounce back and forth and then he'll step in with a jab. So, I don't know, man. I think that Wardley might be a little taken aback by Dubois' speed once he gets in there with him. I know they shared a ring many years ago in sparring, but with the little gloves on, I think it might be a bit different. Big up Arco for the super chat. He says, Hatman, what do you think is the more technically sound, excuse me, who do you think is the more technically sound between Partridge and Femi? That's a very, very good question. And it's an interesting one because AJ's really a textbook boxer, you know? Very orthodox, boxing by the numbers. But he lacks the intuitive ability that Partridge has. Partridge has got a better boxing brain. He's got better instincts. Partridge does a lot of things which would be considered incorrect, but he gets away with it because of his instincts. He knows most of the time, when it's safe to drop his hands, when it's safe to lean back, at what distance it's safe to lean back from. AJ doesn't make as many of those fundamental quote-unquote errors. But when he does, he gets punished more often for them than Partridge does. Because again, he isn't as wise in the ring. He isn't as aware, situationally aware as Partridge is. So it's a very, very interesting question. But I'd say AJ is probably, from a textbook perspective, more fundamentally sound. But because Partridge has got the better boxing brain and the better instincts, the way the fights play out, it's as if Partridge has the better technique. Do you know what I mean? Does that make sense? But it's a very good question. Big up Arco for the super chat. Great question. Benjamin says, and he said he's not concerned about the power as long as he can see them coming, he's Gucci. Well, wait till he gets hit by the power before he says he's not concerned. Do you know what I mean? Wait till he gets hit, because he's never been hit by anyone like Dubois with 10-ounce gloves on yet. Yeah, he's been hit by some big guys, big punches in the gym with 16, 18-ounce gloves. But it's different with the 10 ounces on. Glum Coyote says, I meant to reach a level of thinking where you are able to talk about things by their shared attributes and predicates. So you rise above objects, contingencies, collections of nameless stuff. Yeah, you can have metaphysical conversations more easily with men than you can with women generally, right? Glum Coyote says, AJ is like Yoka, but he's a better puncher. Yeah, in the sense that they're both textbook boxers. I think Yoka might be a little tougher though than AJ. Yoka doesn't have the most amazing chin, but he's tough. You know, the Bacoli fight showed me that he was tough. And also, I get the impression that Yoka is a bit more naturally confident than AJ. Arco says, yeah, most people hype Partridge's style because it's flashy, but his kinetic chain is poor a lot of the time, maybe because his limbs are so long. Long limbs and heavy. He's got an unusual build, doesn't he, Partridge? So he's a bit ungainly the way he moves around and whatnot. AJ has good balance. You know, the way he is on his feet. He's always well balanced, Anthony Joshua. Everything is very structured. Benjamin says, Yoka on TalkSport is so convinced he's washing a collie. Yeah, like I say, Yoka, to me, comes across as a more naturally confident character than Anthony Joshua. Glum Coyote says, I think men are more naturally drawn to concepts than women. Women are not as hungry for communication, whereas men feel the need to share their enthusiasm. Big up Ali for the super chat. He says, a collie will blast him out. I'm picking a collie to beat Yoka too. I think a collie's right hand is I mean, people know he's got a good right hand, but I don't think they quite yet realize how devastating a Collie's right hand is. At heavyweight, I think a Collie's a real serious puncher with that right hand. So I'm picking a Collie to win the fight as well. I think if you're going to beat a Collie, he's already been beat, obviously, but you're going to beat him again, he's going to be somebody that closes him down and doesn't give him space, time and space to get into his boxing groove and get his right hand off. Yoka generally isn't that guy, is he? He isn't the guy to close you down and not give you time and space. Maybe he can switch it up, we'll see. But if he gives a Collie the time and space he normally gives his opponents, I see a Collie winning. Benjamin says, who's a better puncher, a Collie or Bacoli? I think a Collie's probably the hardest single puncher with the right hand. Blum Coyote says, did AJ overachieve? No, I think he actually underachieved a little bit. I think he underachieved a little bit because he was rushed. On yesterday's stream, there were some people saying that they think if AJ had been promoted by Frank Warren, he would have been developed better. May not have become such a big star under Warren, but as far as his boxing development, he might have been developed better. So, yeah, I think AJ underachieved slightly. I'm not saying massively, but slightly, because of the fact he was rushed. I think you could have moved him in a more sensible way and built him in a more sensible way to make him more complete by the time he reached world level. Pick up Hannibal Beats. ATL. KD says, would you visit Central Asia like Uzbekistan? I have no reason nor desire to visit Central Asia right now. Could there be a time in future when I might feel the urge? I don't know, you never know, but as of right now, there's nothing drawing me to Central Asia to visit. Glum Coyote says, what is happening with Bacoli? He vanished from the face of boxing. Last I checked, he was still under contract with boxer Ben Shalom. And that's a problem because what shows is Ben Shalom doing? Billy Nelson, he needs to get Martin Bacoli out of that contract. You know? Because most of the time contracts on the promoter's side have a minimum number of fights that they have to provide for the fighter. Let's say per year. And with Bacoli being so inactive, I mean, surely that voids the contract. I've said previously that Bacoli, if possible, needs to sign with Zuffa. He's exactly the kind of fighter that would benefit from signing with Zuffa. And actually last year, Bacoli said if he can't get the big fights by the end of 2026, he's going to retire. Apparently he's got businesses and stuff like that in Congo that are doing quite well, and he says he'll retire and just concentrate on that. which isn't exactly an encouraging sign, is it? Dominica says Bacoli ain't motivated anymore. I agree. He might be another Andy Ruiz because he apparently got paid a good sum of money to fight Joseph Parker at short notice. And after he got that money, I mean, he already apparently received a pretty decent payday from the Anderson fight. And he piled on a load of pounds after that and got an even better payday against Parker. And he just checked out of boxing. Another Andy Ruiz. You know, some of these guys are good at fighting, but they don't love it. It's just a job to them. And I think Bacoli might fit into that category, along with Ruiz, you know. They're good at it, but they don't love it. Michael Hunter as well, he's another one. Good at boxing, but he don't love it. It's just a job to him. Just a means to an end. King James says, so addicted to food, you leave millions on the table is crazy work. I think Billy Nelson is the biggest problem for Martin Bacoli. I think he's been a very ineffective manager. But Martin Bacoli seems to be very loyal to Billy Nelson, loyal to a fault. I think he should have kicked that guy to the curb years ago. I suspect he would have had more opportunities and done better without Billy Nelson. Striker says Beterbiev is like that. He doesn't seem to be a fan of boxing. It's just his job. But the difference is Beterbiev is a consummate professional. So whether he loves boxing or not, he's never out of shape. The same cannot be said for Martin Bacoli. But to be fair, you know, with some guys, obviously genetics plays a big part. And Beterbiev just looks like one of those guys who can burn fat very efficiently, can burn calories and all that kind of thing very efficiently. Look at the way he's built. You know, people have different body types. I mean, you look at Beterbiev's body type compared to Bivol's, for example. You know, Bivol doesn't have that ripped, chiseled, extremely low body fat, high muscle body type that Beterbiev has. So yeah, Beterbiev's got them genetics. Dominica says Parker should be back soon. Hopefully he's useful. Well, he's still dealing with that PED issue, isn't he? Well, not PED actually, but recreational substance issue. The yayo. He popped for yayo. You got the money? Yeah, I got the money. And I got the yayo. You got the yayo? Okay, bring it over. No, F you. I ain't taking it to Sosa myself. Not Sosa. What's his name now? Frank what? What's his name? Frank, the character in Scarface. Lopez. I ain't taking it to Lopez myself. You got the money? Yeah, I got the money. And I got the yayo. You got the yayo? Yeah, right. Okay, bring it over. F you. I'm taking it to Lopez myself. Glum Coyote says, who are the 5 most technical fighters currently? Usyk. Can I say Crawford, although he's retired? Quote unquote retired. Usyk, Crawford. Who else would I put there? Most technical fighters. I'm not sure I would put in a way there. You know, he's a good technical fighter, but he's not on the level of Usyk and Crawford technically. Canelo's a good technical fighter. Doesn't make a lot of mistakes. But his limitations are not so much technical, they're more athletic, because Canelo doesn't throw a lot of shots. He's got relatively slow feet and so on, but technically he's very good. Canelo makes very few technical mistakes. Stevenson, of course. Oh, wow, yeah, Stevenson. He's top 3. He's technically immaculate, isn't he, Stevenson? Yeah, he's got to be there. Stevenson, technically incredible. All right, peeps. Gonna draw this one to a close. I'd like to thank each and every one of you for engaging in this conversation, participating. A special shout out to those who donated via Super Chat. They were Glum Coyote, GMS Nightmare, Ali, Arco. Big up, big up, big up. Yes, and please smash the like button on the way out, folks. Be much appreciated. Until next time, take care, be good. I'll catch you guys on the other side. I'm out.